18 months ago, Jason McGoldrick, who had gone over to Hungary to set up a company there which had failed, came back to the UK. A few months after that, the Serious Organized Crime Agency, that's our KGB, kicked down the door of his house at 3 in the morning, took him away without telling his wife and family where they were taking him, took him in front of a judge in London who had no power to stop what was happening next, and put him on a plane to Hungary at the request of the prosecuting authorities there, who said they were ready to prosecute him for fraud. There was no hearing to discover whether there was any evidence against him before he was shipped off overseas. Habeas corpus, which is written into Magna Carta, I was reading it in the original Latin only the other day, has now been taken away by this procedure called the European arrest warrant. He was flung into jail without his parents or anybody or his children knowing, or his wife knowing where he was. He was fed on rancid pork fat 3 times a day, which is effectively torture. Under UK law, anyone who did that to you would be prosecuted for torture, and that's a very serious criminal offence. And he was kept there for 4 months, and he got in touch with a Conservative member of the European Parliament. And now you'll know why I'm not a Conservative, because that Conservative member of the European Parliament said to him, I don't care whether you say you're innocent or not. If one of our fellow governments in the European Union says you're guilty, that's enough for me. We don't need trials these days. And you can stay right where you are, and I'm not lifting a finger to help you. And that was the extraordinary reply this man got eventually in prison. So he got in touch with my noble friend, the Earl of Dartmouth, who is a sitting member of the European Parliament in the UKIP interest, United Kingdom Independence Party. He said to him, will you help? And Dartmouth got on the next plane, went to the prison, and got him out, and got him home.
I've got to stop you, sir. Sir, I was not aware of this. I knew this was going on. I have seen on our local news, they bring Japanese police here and are signing deals to allow them to grab U.S. citizens. They bring EU police here. They send our police there. It's unelected. There are no laws. They just do whatever they want, and this is this New World Order system where as long as it's a EU, UN member, you are now under their laws, and they're now saying Americans will be under the anti-free speech laws of Canada via this SPP. We're going to break, but I want to come back and give you the floor, because some stations don't carry this segment, to recap this story in great detail and get into it, because there's so many facets to this, and you bring them all up. And for those that aren't concerned, this is one of the main reasons we had 1776 in this country, is because they had kangaroo courts, and the king and bureaucrats would haul colonists who were British citizens onto boats and deprive them of English law and Magna Carta and take them to these kangaroo courts, sometimes in other possessions. I mean, this is as tyrannical as it gets. Lord Christopher Monckton, this is unbelievable. We're going to pull some news articles up on this when we come back. Unbelievable. This is Alex Jones. I remember more than a decade ago interviewing constitutional law scholars, people like Congressman Ron Paul, others, who pointed out that under the EU system and the UN global governance model, they put all this out officially, their plan, and they teach it at Model UN for high school and college students. I've been to these events. I've had family that was part of it. That someone from Japan can come arrest me here if I violate a free speech law that Japan says is illegal, or the Canadian government that arrests preachers for reading, anti-homosexual stuff out of the Bible. Regardless of what you think of that, it's their right. But now I've seen more and more articles about the EU and all their new Eastern European members where they have total police state rules in place. It's the old Soviet Union model, and they're arresting British citizens and others. And Lord Monckton was getting into a case, I want him to recap it and get into more detail, of Jason McGoldrick, no real judge, no real charges, basically put in a third world style gulag. There's the headline: Britain held in a Hungarian prison to make legal bid. And we've got a whole bunch of other mainstream news articles admitting all of this, where you're seized, not for violating a UK law, something that would be illegal in the UK, and then you're not even given a trial. And Lord Monckton was talking about a conservative member of the EU Parliament from England, so-called conservative, saying we don't need trials anymore. And I remember in 1998, reading the headline, Tony Blair, BBC, the Magna Carta is dead under EU law. And they were proud of it, flaunting it, throwing it. And so before we get into this, Lord Monckton, and the time we have left, it's so important. For those that don't know about 1215 Runnymede, the root of what became British liberty and then the model of the republic here, habeas corpus, every man's home is his castle. For those that don't know, this was the beginning of the end of serfdom. They're trying to bring us back in to serfdom.
This is exactly the point, Alex. Magna Carta was signed by King John with his barons because previously the kings ruled by absolute decree. And eventually the barons said, no, we're not having that. We want to share power with you, and we want to make sure that every citizen of this kingdom has certain minimum rights that you cannot, and no government can arbitrarily tread on. And one of those rights, which is mentioned specifically, is the right not to be arbitrarily moved against or imprisoned. It's mentioned several times in Magna Carta, without a proper public hearing. And what happened to Jason McGoldrick, an innocent small businessman, wife and 2 kids then, he's got a 3rd one now. He went to Hungary to try to set up a business. The business didn't succeed. It went under, owing $18,000. I mean, it wasn't a big amount of money. It was not the kind of thing you could extradite somebody for, even if he defrauded somebody, which, you know, he said he didn't. I can't tell you whether he did or he didn't, but that's not the point of the story. The point was no evidence whatsoever that he committed any crime was put before any court in the UK. And he went before one of the UK's best judges, Mr. Justice Collins, the first solicitor ever to sit as a judge on the High Court, who reads everything, really cares about human rights, and Collins was horrified at being asked simply to rubber stamp a request by the Hungarian prosecutors that Jason McGoldrick, without even his family being told, should be shipped straight out to Hungary and locked away until he was tried for alleged fraud. And the judge said, I have to presume, he said, that there is prima facie evidence against you, evidence on the face of it that you have committed a crime. I'm not allowed to ask any questions about whether there is any such evidence.
And that's Napoleonic. That's Napoleonic. That's guilty until proven innocent.
It's not. It's worse than that, because at least the juge d'instruction under the Napoleonic Code, that's the magistrate at first instance under our system, has the right and indeed the duty to ask questions. It's an interrogative rather than adversarial system, where the magistrate asks questions to find out whether there is at least a case.
So it's even worse then. It's more like...
we're not talking about a Napoleonic system. We're not talking about a British system. We are talking about a Soviet communist system.
Wow.
Under which the accused has no right at all to be heard. Habeas corpus, Alex, in Britain is gone. And at a meeting just last night, out in Largo Ward in Fife, which is quite well attended by local people, I said, I'm going to call Britain a police state and then ask how many of you think that that's overstating the case. And about 40% of them put their hands up and said they thought that was overstating it. Then I told them the story of Jason McGoldrick. I said, the KGB, we call them the Serious Organised Crime Agency. They're one of the most hateful organisations in Britain. They kicked down his door at 3 in the morning. Without any warning, they arrested him. They had him in front of Mr. Justice Collins in the High Court in no time at all. And Mr. Justice Collins ordered him to be put on the plane and taken to Hungary, where he was locked up for 4 months without trial, without anyone having told him what he was accused of, without anyone allowing him access to a lawyer or the British consul, without anyone telling his wife or children where he was, and he was fed on rancid pork fat 3 times a day.